Hey everybody, another video here for you today. We are going to tack another one on to my Ancient America series, just documenting lost Ancient America sites, and we're going down to Iowa today. Now, I have talked a lot about earthworks that are in Ohio and a few other places. I was kind of surprised to read about all the lost earthworks in Iowa. Here we are above the Toolesboro mound site. There's a few mounds down here. This is on a plateau above the Iowa River here. But one of the more interesting earthworks that were in Iowa, lost to history, was on this little plateau, this bluff up here. Let's just take a look. Let's go down to what is left of the site today. Take a peek around. I think there's just a few mounds in the main park here, and there might be a few back in the woods here, but this is the memorial site right here. Here's the park today. A couple mounds sit right in it, and then I think there are a few lost mounds just off the main park here. And right in front of the park, they have the 6 Littleton Brothers Memorial right there. And if we back out, we will take a look at what this place used to look like before the roads and the current civilization moved in. Here are the mounds right here, and there was a bunch of them that ran in a row right along the bluff here. This is what it looked like in antiquity, the row of mounds here. And then there was this strange earthwork, this enclosure with the 2 gates here. And that is pretty unique to ancient America, but I think I have seen that symbol somewhere before. I'll show that in just a second here. Today, only a couple mounds in the park, and then that earthwork is totally lost to history. Let's just read what happened to that. It says here, perhaps the most enigmatic earthwork in Iowa existed near the tiny community of Toolesboro on a bluff overlooking the mouth of the Iowa River in Louisa County, southeastern Iowa. At this location, John B. Newhall, 1841, mapped a complex enclosure adjacent to a row of large conical mounds. Subsequent reports describe the enclosure with conflicting accounts of its size, shape, and height. The enclosure was eradicated by plowing soon after Newhall's report, so it is not surprising that measurements and descriptions differ. In general, accounts suggest it was an enclosure that was octagonal to circular, with walls perhaps 4 feet high at the time of the settlement, covering 5 or 6 acres. One or more of the causeways led from an enclosure to nearby mounds and perhaps to a spring. The only map made of the earthwork before it was plowed always showed a perfectly symmetrical octagonal structure with 2 causeways. I have shown many earthwork enclosures, but not one shaped like this, but that does look a little bit like some cave art found in Tennessee here. You notice the one on the right? And this symbol here, I might have shown this in my Shiloh Mounds video. This symbol here looks a little bit like the earthen enclosure, octagon, 8 indentations, but that symbol right there caught my eye. Looks like that one, at least basically it does. Now here is the website I found. It says, Dale Henning of Decorah, student at University of Iowa, points with his trowel to a depression and markings in the dirt, which show that at one time, probably 1,500 years ago, this pit was used for storage by a tribe that lived at the site. And this site goes back over 2,000 years, maybe 2,200 years. That is the best guesstimation. The town of Toolesboro in southern Louisa County, about 12 miles east of Wapello, is on a high bluff overlooking the Iowa River where it empties into the Mississippi. It was laid out in 1837 by William L. Toole, the first postmaster at Toolesboro when the post office was established. On May 27, 1837, was also the first merchant in town and was a member of the first Constitutional Convention. A 10-mile area around Toolesboro was considered a prime spot to find artifacts because its proximity to the river. The string of 9 mounds once ran northwesterly from the angle of the bluff. The last one was near the entrance to an old fort that once stood at the site of a cultivated field. And the old fort, that's what they call the earthworks, and that is common in other areas too. They call it the old fort. I call them earthworks. Here is a look from inside the museum, but copper effigy pipes. This site is very similar to other ones I have talked about. There are goods, copper from the Lake Superior area, seashells from the Gulf of Mexico, mica from the Appalachian Mountains, obsidian from the region that is now Yellowstone, ancient America was one big trading network. And here's that list from the Rocky Mountains to Illinois, Wisconsin, North Dakota, Indiana, copper from the Great Lakes. Here it says 2 copper axes removed from one of the mounds here. Here's a stone with an image carved into it. Not really sure what that represents. There's a look at one of the effigy pipes found in one of the mounds. Here's another article I will leave below, Discover Remnants of an Ancient Culture in Iowa. And here's a diagram of a mound and what they found inside: a burial crypt, a wooden roof, artifacts for the afterlife, copper shroud pins. He was wrapped in a burial shroud. Might have more to say on that subject coming up. Prepared clay floor. That's what they found inside the mounds. It says rising just 8 feet tall and 100 feet across. Even the largest of the 7 hills at Toolesboro Mounds National Site are easy to miss. They're not as dramatic as the Egyptian pyramids. Archaeologists believe that members of Iowa's early Hopewell culture, a middle woodland people, built these burial mounds between 100 BC and 200 AD as a way to pay tribute to prominent leaders, probably chiefs and priests, and then send them into the afterlife with prized possessions from far-flung trading partners. These included objects made from glassy black obsidian from the Rocky Mountains, copper from the Great Lakes, pearls from the Gulf of Mexico, and even shark teeth from Chesapeake Bay. Similar burial mounds and geometric earthworks have been discovered throughout the eastern half of the United States, roughly centered in Ohio. In fact, the Hopewell culture's name comes from the 1891 excavation of a mound on an Ohio farm owned by Mordecai Hopewell. It's unclear what the Hopewell people called themselves, since no written clues remain. This culture that lived 2,000 years ago in the ancient United States, we call them Hopewell because we don't know who they were. It says most mounds were built atop a floor layer of sand or clay, or a central platform upon which the bodies and artifacts were placed, either lying down or propped up in a sitting position against the side of the tomb. Then came layers of earth, clay, sand, gravel, piled into a conical mound. Here's another one of the effigy pipes here. But it says no further excavations are being planned for 2 main reasons. First, it's important to remember that the mounds are sacred burial sites like modern-day cemeteries. Many people today would find it offensive if their relatives' graves were excavated in order to learn more about how they lived. Secondly, archaeology can be destructive. Opening the mounds would destroy the possibility of future study. Artifacts that are removed from a site can never be replaced in an exact position in which they were originally deposited. Currently, archaeologists prefer to use non-intrusive methods to explore ancient sites, such as Toolesboro Mounds. Non-intrusive methods include aerial photography, surface surveys, and remote ground sensory imaging, which works like a giant X-ray. That is my video on the Toolesboro Mounds National Historic Site. A long time ago, it looked a lot different. A giant earthwork here, octagonal, if that's what you want to call it, but pretty unique to ancient America. Ancient America, well, especially along the Mississippi and the major rivers, was full of cities, just like it is today. The rivers were lined with ancient cities, and they traded goods between them. This whole area was one big network connected by the rivers. Hope you thought that was interesting, and you all have a very nice day.